Welcome to another episode of the Emma International Deep Dive, where we explore the innovations, regulations, and evolving challenges shaping the life sciences industry. Today, we're diving into one of the most exciting and rapidly evolving topics in the field: artificial intelligence and machine learning in clinical trials.
AI and ML are no longer just buzzwords. They're fundamentally changing how we design, run, and evaluate clinical research. From predictive modeling to patient recruitment to real-time data analysis, these technologies are making clinical trials faster, smarter, and in some cases more inclusive. But as with any disruptive shift, there's a lot to unpack, especially when it comes to regulatory expectations.
So let's start from the top. Why is AI and ML becoming such a big deal in clinical trials? One reason is data. We're generating more of it than ever before: electronic health records, wearable devices, genomic data, imaging, and even patient-reported outcomes. The sheer volume is overwhelming if you're using traditional methods to analyze it. Now, with machine learning, we can actually make sense of it. We can find patterns, make predictions, and personalize treatment approaches in a way that just wasn't possible even 5 years ago.
Take patient recruitment, for example. Historically, this has been one of the most difficult and expensive parts of running a trial. But AI can now analyze electronic medical records and identify patients who match specific inclusion and exclusion criteria. That means less time screening, less money wasted, and potentially better trial diversity.
And it's not just about recruitment. AI is helping optimize trial design itself. Sponsors can use machine learning to simulate different study parameters before a single patient is enrolled. That means smarter protocols, fewer amendments, and ultimately faster paths to results.
Then there's real-time monitoring. Traditional trials rely on periodic check-ins and static endpoints, but AI allows for dynamic analysis. Wearables and remote monitoring devices stream data continuously, and machine learning algorithms can flag anomalies as they happen. This isn't just efficient, it's safer for patients and more valuable for sponsors.
Now, here's where things get complicated. While the science and technology are moving quickly, the regulatory landscape is still catching up. The FDA has recognized the power of AI and ML in clinical research, but they've also made it clear innovation can't come at the expense of safety, transparency, or reproducibility.
One of the FDA's key concerns is algorithmic transparency. In other words, if you're using an AI model to make decisions about trial design, patient eligibility, or endpoint assessment, you need to be able to explain how that model works. Regulators don't want a black box approach, especially when patient safety is on the line.
And that leads to a whole host of questions around validation. How do you prove your AI model is accurate? What kind of testing and documentation are required? How do you handle bias in your data sets or drift in your model over time? These are active areas of discussion, not just in the US, but globally.
The FDA has taken some initial steps to address this. In 2021, they released a discussion paper on the use of AI and ML in drug development, and they've continued to engage with industry and academia to develop guidance. But it's still a work in progress. For now, the burden is on sponsors to show that their AI-enabled tools are reliable, explainable, and fit for purpose.
Another challenge is integrating AI into existing trial infrastructure. Many clinical sites still rely on legacy systems that aren't built to handle streaming data or advanced analytics. And even when the technology is there, staff may not be trained to use it properly or to recognize the limitations.
That's where strategy becomes essential. It's not enough to bolt AI onto an existing protocol and hope for the best. You need to think through the use case, the risks, the data pipeline, and the regulatory implications from day one. And that's where we've been supporting clients at Emma International, helping them design studies that are not just innovative, but also compliant and audit-ready.
Because here's the thing, regulators are watching this space closely. They're excited about the potential of AI, but they're also cautious. They want to see strong data governance, proper model validation, and robust clinical oversight. And frankly, so do we. The goal here isn't just faster trials, it's better trials.
One area that's particularly promising is adaptive trial design. This is where AI can really shine. By analyzing accumulating data during the study, sponsors can make real-time decisions, adjusting sample sizes, modifying randomization schemes, even dropping ineffective arms. The potential for efficiency is massive. But again, you need a rock-solid strategy to justify those adaptations to regulators.
We're also seeing more discussion around synthetic control arms, using real world data and AI algorithms to create control groups rather than relying solely on traditional randomization. That can make trials more ethical, more appealing to patients, and in some cases, more relevant. But it also raises new questions about bias, data quality, and statistical validity.
And speaking of patients, there's another benefit of AI that often gets overlooked: accessibility. By using digital tools and remote monitoring, trials can reach patients who might never have participated otherwise, due to geography, mobility, or other barriers. That's a huge win for equity and representation in clinical research.
But we have to be careful because not everyone has equal access to technology. And if we're not intentional about design, we risk widening the gap instead of closing it. That's why ethical oversight and patient centered thinking are so important in this space.
It's also why collaboration matters. No single organization, no matter how big, can figure all this out on their own. That's why EMA International has been actively working with sponsors, CROs, site networks, and regulators to shape best practices. Because this isn't just a trend, it's the future of clinical development.
And while the potential of AI in trials is exciting, it's important to talk about scalability too. A lot of the early wins we've seen with AI have been in small, tightly controlled pilot studies. But moving from proof of concept to full scale deployment across a multi center trial, possibly even a global one, is a much bigger lift. It's not just about having the right algorithms anymore, it's about interoperability, compliance, cybersecurity, and standardizing how AI tools are integrated into workflows across dozens or even hundreds of sites.
We've seen clients struggle with this. They might have a brilliant tool that works great in a single environment. But once you try to implement it in a broader real-world setting, you start hitting roadblocks. The site's infrastructure isn't compatible. The staff doesn't know how to use it. The sponsor doesn't have a clear SOP for troubleshooting. That's when these technologies start to feel more like a burden than a benefit.
That's why we stress the importance of infrastructure planning from day one. Before you even start thinking about model training or predictive analytics, you have to look at your organization's digital readiness. Do you have a centralized data lake? Are your EDC systems capable of integrating real time feeds? Do you have governance in place to handle algorithm updates or retraining?
Because one of the trickiest parts of using AI in clinical trials is managing changes over time. Unlike a static spreadsheet or dataset, AI models evolve. They learn. That's part of what makes them powerful. But it also introduces risk. If your algorithm changes mid-trial, how do you validate consistency? How do you prove to regulators that the output is still reliable?
This is especially important in trials involving endpoints that rely on imaging or signal detection. Let's say you're using AI to detect early biomarkers from wearable electrocardiogram monitors. If your model gets retrained or adjusted mid study, the results from before and after changes were made may not be equivalent. That's a serious regulatory consideration.
It's why version control, audit trails, and model documentation are so essential. We help clients build out full model lifecycle documentation. Who developed it? What data it was trained on? What performance benchmarks it met? And what ongoing monitoring processes are in place? That kind of transparency isn't just helpful. It's going to be required as these tools become more embedded in regulated workflows.
Now, let's talk a bit about global harmonization. Different countries are taking different approaches to AI regulation. In the EU, for example, the Artificial Intelligence Act introduces a risk based classification system for AI systems, with high risk systems, like those used in clinical trials, subject to more rigorous oversight. Canada has similar frameworks. So, if you're running a multi region trial, it's not enough to meet FDA expectations. You need a global compliance strategy.
And this is where Emma's expertise in international regulatory affairs comes into play. We're not just US focused. We've helped clients navigate Health Canada, EMA, MHRA, and TGA requirements, and increasingly AI oversight is part of those conversations. We've even been tracking how Asia Pacific regulators, like Singapore's HSA and Japan's PMDA, are developing their own AI guidance, which sometimes aligns with Western models but often introduces unique local requirements. If your trial spans these regions, overlooking those nuances can lead to costly delays.
It's also worth mentioning that we're seeing a real convergence between regulatory and ethical oversight. Institutional review boards and ethics committees are beginning to ask direct questions about algorithmic decision making. Are patient populations being represented fairly? Is the model introducing or reinforcing bias? How is patient data privacy being protected? In some cases, we've seen review boards request not just a description of the AI tool, but a plain language explanation of how it was trained, who validated it, and how the sponsor plans to monitor it over time. That level of scrutiny is new for many sponsors and CROs.
These are not easy questions, but they're essential to maintaining public trust and to building systems that truly serve patients, not just streamline operations.
And speaking of trust, transparency is going to be one of the defining challenges of AI adoption in clinical research. We need sponsors and investigators to not just use AI, but to understand it. That means demystifying the terminology, unpacking the methodology, and training cross functional teams to work with these tools responsibly.
We've actually been running custom workshops for clinical teams, breaking down how machine learning works, what model outputs really mean, and how to interpret performance metrics like precision, recall, and F1 scores in a regulated context. We also simulate real-world trial scenarios, letting teams test drive AI-assisted decision-making before it's deployed so they can see firsthand where the technology excels and where human oversight is still critical.
Because when we talk to investigators or trial managers, one of the biggest sources of friction is simply not knowing how to evaluate the AI component of their studies. It's like having a very sophisticated co pilot you're not sure how to communicate with.
That's where education and collaboration come in. When your quality team understands how the model was validated, your regulatory team knows how to justify it, and your clinical team feels confident using it. You unlock a completely different level of performance.
We're already seeing early adopters reaping the rewards. Trials that used to take 4 to 5 years are wrapping up in 2 or 3. Sponsors are identifying adverse trends before they become serious. Sites are spending less time on manual data entry and more time focused on patient care. And from a global perspective, harmonized AI strategies are allowing sponsors to run parallel submissions and approvals, cutting months, sometimes years off the time it takes to reach multiple markets.
And perhaps most exciting of all, patients themselves are seeing the benefits. We're talking about better matching, shorter enrollment periods, fewer site visits, and in some cases, more precise treatments tailored to their unique biology.
That's the vision behind AI in clinical trials, not just automation for the sake of efficiency, but intelligence in service of impact.
Of course, this is still a maturing field. There's a lot we don't know yet. How will regulators define good machine learning practices? What does a pre-approval inspection look like for a trial with AI-powered endpoints? How do we create standards for explainability and fairness that actually work across different models and therapeutic areas?
These are questions we're exploring actively at Emma, both through our consulting work and our participation in working groups and regulatory dialogues. We're also collaborating with technology providers to help shape best practices because the earlier industry and regulators align, the smoother the path will be for safe, effective AI integration. And we'll continue to share what we learn because we believe this is where the future of clinical research is headed, and we want our clients to be ready for it.
And all of this is unfolding in real time. We're not just talking about a future possibility anymore. AI and machine learning are already shaping how we design trials, recruit participants, monitor safety, and even analyze endpoints.
But with all this momentum, it's easy to get swept up in the excitement and forget that regulatory science tends to move a little more cautiously. And for good reason. We're still talking about patient safety, data integrity, and products that could have lifelong impacts.
Which is why implementation has to be thoughtful. Just because a tool is available doesn't mean it's appropriate for every trial. You need a clear use case, a well-documented validation strategy, and alignment across quality, regulatory, clinical, and even legal teams.
And let's not forget about the software supply chain. When a sponsor uses a third party artificially intelligent tool, like whether it's for signal detection, data cleaning, or predictive modeling, they're still responsible for verifying it meets GXP expectations. That includes vendor qualification, security assessments, and sometimes even source code reviews.
It's a heavy lift, but that's where partnering with the right support team can make all the difference. At Emma, we've worked with clients on everything from algorithm validation plans to preparing FDA briefing packets focused specifically on AI-enabled technologies.
And we've seen that when you approach this proactively and with a strong foundation and a clear communication strategy, regulators are very open to innovation. What they're looking for is clarity, not just what the model does, but how it does it, why it was chosen, and how you'll ensure it continues to perform reliably.
That's the heart of regulatory alignment in the AI space, building systems that are not only effective but explainable.
And that's especially important as AI models become more complex. We're seeing a shift from traditional supervised learning models to more advanced neural networks and deep learning approaches, which are often considered to be black box systems.
These models can identify patterns that human analysts would never spot, but they also introduce challenges in terms of transparency and reproducibility. That's why regulatory agencies are starting to focus on the concept of explainable AI, a set of practices designed to make these tools more understandable and interpretable.
And here's where the human element matters most. Explainability isn't just about satisfying regulators, it's about giving your own teams the confidence to rely on AI outputs, knowing they're grounded in sound logic and robust science.
Exactly. Because if you don't trust your artificial intelligence, you won't use it effectively. And if your team doesn't understand it, they'll work around it, which ends up defeating the whole purpose.
That's why we're helping clients build internal artificially intelligent governance frameworks. These are cross functional committees that oversee model selection, validation, updates, and ethical review, kind of like an internal FDA for your AI systems.
It may sound like overkill, but for companies that want to use AI at scale, and especially for those pursuing digital health or personalized medicine, it's going to become a competitive advantage. Strong governance is what builds resilience, trust, and long-term success.
And as the regulatory environment evolves, having that internal muscle memory will make it much easier to respond to new expectations. Whether it's a change to FDA guidance, an update to ICH E6, or the rollout of global AI legislation.
So where does that leave us today? AI and ML in clinical trials are no longer experimental. They're becoming essential. The companies that succeed will be the ones who invest in foundational strategy, build strong data governance, and align cross-functional teams from the beginning.
And that's where Emma International can help. We bring together expertise across clinical operations, regulatory science, digital health, and data strategy so our clients don't just implement AI, they implement it right.
Whether you're just starting to explore machine learning applications or you're preparing for your first AI-enhanced FDA submission, our team can guide you through every phase.
From use case development and vendor selection to validation, documentation, and regulatory engagement, we're here to support the whole AI lifecycle.
Because this isn't just about technology, it's about transforming our research methods. And that transformation, done well, has the power to accelerate development, improve patient outcomes, and ultimately bring safer, more effective therapies to market faster.
And that's something we're incredibly excited to be part of. So, thank you for joining us today on the Emma International Deep Dive. If you found today's episode helpful, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss our future discussions.
And if your organization is ready to explore how AI and machine learning can elevate your clinical trial strategy, we'd love to start that conversation.
Visit emmainternational.com to learn more or connect directly with one of our experts.
Until next time, stay safe, stay compliant, and stay innovative.